I'm going to talk about multi-touch attribution in this video. First of all, what is it? Multi-touch attribution is basically an area of thought around how you split credit for conversions that come to your website or your business, whether that is signing up for a service or buying a product, how you split credit between different marketing activities and product activities for that matter that influence a prospect or an existing customer to take a certain action. So the reason this is important is oftentimes companies will start doing advertising. The more they start doing advertising, they have like 3, 5, 10 channels running at one time targeting the same people. And the question inevitably comes up, which of these channels is most responsible for this cohort of conversions? And that's a really hard question to answer, and that's what multi-touch attribution is intended to do. So normally what you run into is you'll have an internal data source that's tracking click conversions. So it's tracking the last marketing campaign or last marketing URL that was used before a conversion happened. And so this internal source is registering conversion credit that way. And inevitably, that gives a lot of credit to really down funnel click-based activities. And then you'll have marketers using things like display networks where it's largely view-based rather than click-based and is higher in the funnel. And so you've got like a finance department looking at the clicks and they're saying, no, what you're doing in displays has no impact. And then you've got the advertisers saying, oh, no, I see a lot of conversions coming through because they're looking at a conversion pixel, from Google, for example, that make it look like they're getting a lot of conversions. So multi-touch attribution is a way to answer the question once and for all, and everybody get on the same page. When we're running paid search, when we're running Facebook, when we're running Twitter, when we're running display, here is one source of truth of how a conversion gets split depending on the path that they follow. So that's sort of the goal of multi-touch attribution. There are two main challenges with doing multi-touch attribution well. One is to actually collect all the data points in one place. So as you can imagine, if you don't have a handful of the touches in a database, in the same database, then it's impossible to really divvy up credit between them. This is particularly a problem with Facebook impressions because it is very, very difficult to get Facebook impression data out of Facebook into something like Google Analytics, even if you're paying for premium. So that's a really common challenge. The other instances, any sort of offline media or marketing activities, is very hard to track those touches in a database. The other challenge is once you have everything in a single place, how do you what is the model for spreading credit across those touches? And most companies start with a last touch or a last click attribution model, and then they often make a subjective claim of a linear model is best, which would mean that if 4 different campaigns touch somebody before a conversion, then all 4 touches get equal credit. So that's linear. Or you could do a U-shaped where the first impression gets a lot of credit, the last impression gets a lot of credit, last touch gets a lot of credit, and then the steps in between get less. So there are all of these different shapes of how you can attribute credit, but that's often subjective. So it kind of begs the question, well, how do you know which model to use? How do you know what's right even after you select one? And there are two kind of approaches. One is to take a data-driven model where in theory, you can trust an algorithm. Google Analytics has an algorithmic attribution modeling solution, as do many other pure play attribution providers, for reasons that are too detailed to explain here. Those have issues. Or what I would recommend for a lot of particularly early stage companies is to do incrementality testing. So you can validate a model by running tests, basically A/B testing your actual creative and targeting with PSA creative. So if you run a set of ads against your normal targeting, but you do it for a local nonprofit or something, and still track the conversion rate using a Facebook pixel, for example, if showing creative for the nonprofit generates a conversion rate of 1%, and then your actual ads against that same audience generate a conversion rate of 3%, then your incrementality is 2%. And so now you know how to discount it, and you can basically pick an attribution model that reflects that number of conversions that represents 2%. So those are sort of the challenges. Usually companies don't want to get into multi-touch attribution until they're doing, call it, $5 to $10 million a year in advertising spend. Below that threshold, the tools and resources that it costs to do attribution well are just so expensive that it often, the ROI of the effort, often is negative. So yeah, that's multi-touch attribution.